Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life. Hey everybody, welcome back. On this week's episode, I've got Jeff Gonzales, former Navy SEAL, firearms trainer, and actually wrote one of the first books on integrated firearms training I ever bought in my youth. So wow. I'm happy to have him on. Yeah, no, I've still got it. It's on my bookshelf, man. All right, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, Jeff?
Sure. Jeff Gonzales. My background comes from Naval Special Warfare. Spent the better half of my life there, East Coast, West Coast, as an operator and an instructor. I left the Navy. I did kind of the same job, just did it for a different organization. And in the process, I stood up Trident Concepts. And so Trident Concepts has been in business now for 20 plus years. I think it's like 23 years, and we've covered the gamut. We've done a lot of good work. I'm extremely proud and grateful for the success that we've had. It wasn't easy, but it's been one of my most rewarding journeys, if you will, being in the training industry and helping folks from all walks of life try to better solve these problems.
And that's one of the things that I've always liked about your training, going back to the book, right? Going back to the original exposure I had to you. Thanks to Ken Good actually recommended that I get that book.
I love Ken. God, I haven't heard that name in a while.
I still talk to him. I love Ken. Who takes up motocross in their 60s? Like, who does
that? My wrists just hurt thinking about that.
Yeah. No, he has an indomitable spirit, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like
100%.
Nothing is going to slow that guy down.
100%. Love that guy.
And he's a thinker too, which I like.
Very much.
He doesn't just regurgitate what he's been told. He's got like critical thinking about things, which is cool. So one of the things I really liked about your book was that it was kind of an integrated approach to things. It wasn't just, here's the pistol, here's the rifle, here's the shotgun. It was like, how do I stand for all of them? How do I do things for all of them? What are kind of the mental concepts?
Mm-hmm.
And every training book I'd been exposed to since then, or before then, I should say, kind of reminded me of, remember all the old martial arts books where it was all like, when grabbed with a cross-hand wrist grip, do A, B, C, D.
Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah. You've made a common beginner's mistake. You did not attack me correctly. But like that was kind of the state of the art back then, right? And then I got your book, and it was a much more in-depth kind of thinking man's approach to it, not just remembering a set of techniques that will somehow supposedly always work against a given stimulus, right? So I liked that a lot. So how did you get there? Because that was not the state of the art in training back then.
So great question, first of all. God, and I love this. Talking about this, like origins and whatnot, is fantastic. We both come from a special operations background. And so, my forging process is very similar to your forging process and all the countless other guys that have gone through it. But, it affects us all a little bit differently. And one thing that I really took away from mine, I was very lucky because as soon as I got from Buds to my team, I was fortunate enough to already be in a combat environment. And that really helped me to better understand things. I saw gaps. I saw areas that we couldn't fill. There's just no way that we can anticipate all of this. And so I looked at it and approach from a broader perspective. It's like, okay, I can't, if all I'm ever doing is repeating this drill, and then I find myself in a situation where that drill doesn't work, how do I manage? And the best example, and some of your audience can totally appreciate this, is CQB, any type of any type of room assault or any type of assaults on some sort of structure, no matter how good the intel is or how many times you rehearse your assault, there's always going to be something different. There's always, this room wasn't here. This doorway wasn't here. This is supposed to be a push. It's a pull. And what I started to pay attention to was how did guys react to that? Because that's reality. And when I saw that guys reacted to it with an outcome that I thought resulted in a good outcome, like something positive, maybe it wasn't the perfect technique, but it worked and it got the job done and it didn't delay the assault, I started to pay more attention to that. And as we really kind of looked at it more closely, what we discovered was that the guys that were able to bridge that gap really well were guys that had a bigger picture kind of perspective. Like they weren't fixated on, I must do it like this. My left foot must be the first foot that enters the threshold. They had a much more fluid concept to this, which allowed them to adapt to that situation more. And really what it boiled down to was making split-second decisions correctly, like that led to the right outcome that we were looking for.
Yeah.
So from that, and it all boils down to like our weapon mechanics and how well we run the guns. And you can't be thinking about how you run the guns when you're trying to think about solving a problem in a house, in a shoot house. It all has to be reflexive and automated. And I think my thought process from how I look at CQB just kind of rolled into how I fight with my guns, or how I fight with my knives, or how I fight with my hands, whatever the case might be. It has to be that integrated approach. It has to be something that's fluid, dynamic. But also, I learned over the years that those gaps, while we can do our best to fill, are never going to get filled. And I finally kind of gave up the ghost. I don't know when it was, but I was like, you know what, screw it. Okay, we're never going to have a solution to this problem. So what? We have an ability to cover that gap. And as long as we can cover the gap, I think that's all that really matters. So some people will get really fixated on, well, we have to do it this way. I'm like, okay, well, fine. But as soon as something changes, now what?
And like, oh man, there's such a rabbit hole here.
I know.
This may take us like half the episode, but so I've got some thoughts on this, right? So like one of them is like one of the things that my deep dives, because I love diving deep down rabbit holes of information and trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
Is this thing that sports psychologists talk about when they talk about chunking.
Yes.
Where you create these chunks of skill and they're like
Boom.
Lego blocks. And then you look at the problem and you assemble your Lego blocks in the right way to handle
100%.
the problem. Instead of, I will always do this, or this, but it's also contextual. And you might wind up doing something different than your pre-programmed script just because of some random variable that isn't even a tactical variable. Like something triggered you to go a slightly different way. What do you do? Right. So I think
true.
that is something that a lot of institutional training, I think, neglects, and even a lot of like civilian training neglects, right? Is that ability to, we're not going to have, you don't want to memorize 50 different responses to 50 different attacks. You want to memorize your skill set and then have the ability to apply those, like you said, at a subconscious level of skill, however is appropriate, right?
So true. I love that too. Chunking is a big thing, blocking is a big thing in that sense, because when we get to that point, it also benefits the end user because they can stay fixated on what they're good at.
Yeah.
And then they can, so like I've always, I use the CrossFit model. People always get butthurt when I do this, but CrossFit model has a great concept in the sense that whenever the CrossFit Games were announced, and then we started with the open season, Dave Castro would always come up with these wicked workouts. And I would go into these workouts thinking, I'm ready. I've been practicing on these skills. And he throws some new movement that I either suck at, never did well at, or was just whatever. And so I would always come back from the open season thinking to myself, okay, I got to work on this. I got to work on that. I got to work on this. So next year, when he throws the open at me, I'm better prepared. And so I try to tell people that same thing. You're already good at something, which gives you the ability to start working in other areas that you're not so good at. And when you have that kind of fluid concept where, okay, not everything is going to be a perfect response. I get sometimes a little butthurt when we get too involved with video analysis of like real fights, what are CTAs and what are CCTs. I think there's value in that, but each one of those is like a unique snowflake. And even if you were to be back in that same exact scenario, it's probably not going to go the same way. So building tactics around the observations of what we see, I feel like is the wrong approach. I would rather build blocks and then use the appropriate block for the appropriate response.
100%. And like I like looking at, dash cam and body cam vids and security cam vids too, 100%. But I think we tend to, it's almost the backwards mistake you make in traditional martial arts, right? So like I did a lot of traditional martial arts as a kid, and and he's a young man, at least younger than I am now. And there's a bunch of like really good things in there. But what messes them up is people confuse the medium with the message. They confuse the drill, the kata, with the actual fight, and they're not the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think when we do this video analysis, we're somehow, a lot of us, not all of us, are making the same mistake in reverse. Like a good example of this is the retreating bill drill. Like everybody loves the retreating bill drill now, right? I hate the retreating bill drill. I'm not saying you should never do it. I can think of a couple circumstances tactically where I would, either to back up to someone who needs to be shielded by me from the threat, or if there's cover, I'm hitting the threat while I back up to cover. I can see those uses for it. But that kind of reflexive backing up and firing as a fear response. And then now we're training the fear response like it's the appropriate tactic.
Yeah.
But it's really not, because if you think about, and here's the mistake I think with that, is that people somehow think a gunfight isn't just a fight. And by that, I mean, they think somehow all the physiological and psychological aspects of a fight don't apply when you have a gun.
Yeah.
And it's actually the opposite. They apply pretty strictly and severely, because a gun is a psychologically imposing tool when you're putting rounds on somebody, right?
Absolutely.
So if I was in a fist fight with someone and my response would be to back up as a fear response, what am I doing to the person who's trying to punch me?
Yeah.
I'm encouraging them. They think like they're winning. They're dominating psychologically, right? So if there's no cover and there's no reason for me to back up, I'm not protecting someone else. What am I doing in a gunfight when I back up? Am I making myself a harder target? No. And psychologically, I'm giving that guy, even if I'm putting effective rounds on him that are going to kill him, he may be alive long enough to shoot me because he thinks he's winning.
Yeah. The other thing I love about that analogy is like it's not situationally dependent. Like the thought process of my default response should be immediately start retreating and throwing rounds. Maybe, like you said, there's a good reason. I'm backing up to cover, I'm backing up to shield. But as a default setting, I see that's the problem that I have with some of these ideas that guys will share. It's like, well, this should be a training response because it's gonna buy you distance, it's gonna give you time, and I'm like, none of that is a guarantee.
Yeah,
none of those options are guarantees. But what it will do for us is it's gonna slow our response. It's gonna reduce our level of accuracy. It's going to create other variables that are uncontrollable. I don't know what's behind me. I don't know how fast I can move through that terrain. I might trip and fall and turn that situation into an even worse situation. So that's the thing that I wish more people would think about. Like, just take a step back and say, is a default setting like the old standard defensive response of 2-round drill? Like, I think that's great, right? I think it's a good start point, but it shouldn't be.
It's better than 1 round.
Exactly, it's better than 1 round, but it's not the answer. It's just a way for us to codify technique, like follow-up shot. Okay, you've got your draw stroke with 1 round, but the second round is all about your follow-through. How well is your follow-through and subsequent shots after that, blah, 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 blah. But using it as a default response to any deadly force encounter, to me, is just like it programs somebody to be less receptive to what's happening in real time. Yeah. Being able to react in real time and recognize what's going on and be able to make those split-second decisions like I was talking about. That's what I believe we're denying the rest of the training industry.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree. And it's not that learning to fire an accurate, fast, controlled pair is a bad thing. It is not. It's one of the fundamental skills of shooting for combat.
Exactly.
But how many rounds I put on that guy should be contingent on what's going on, not on 100%. Some default. Yeah,
exactly.
It might be 1 round. It might be a full magazine. It's just.
This is the beautiful thing about that's the beautiful thing about trying to get people to understand that there's no way to predict what type of gunfight you're going to be in. You might, like, first of all, from a civilian context, let's talk about the civilian context, a reaction, with some sort of violent crime committed against a person. If you had with any sense of accuracy and knowledge that you were going to be attacked, well, then the right answer is to avoid that, not go there, not do that, whatever that is. But since we don't, we know we're going to be surprised. So basically, in a nutshell, what we're doing, we're training the civilian community to do is be able to react to an unknown, unknowable event.
Yep.
I don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know what it's going to be like. We have some ideas. Like, we know that maybe it's going to fall into this parameter, but that's still a very big box. And when you train somebody to have a very streamlined or narrow focused response, you're eliminating their ability to think on their feet, which to me is probably the single greatest tool that you have. Is your brain being able to react in real time and recognize what's happening. In other words, do I need to continue to shoot? Do I not need to shoot? Do I need to adjust my point of aim because the body shots aren't doing it? Do I need to address his friends that are left or right of him that are now starting to encroach on me? All of these things that are happening in real time, man, people are just, they're so fixated on this two round drill that's going to solve my problem, and I could just return to the holster and go home happy.
Well, and it's like, my opinion has been for a very long time that all fighting is mental. Like, the physical side of fighting is what I'm using, the tool I'm using to impose my will. Right? Whether that's a handgun or a JDAM or I'm arguing with a stranger, right? Like, it's the physical tool is how I'm using, is what I'm using to make the mental effect I'm trying to make. Right.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously that may wind up with the other person being deceased, but that's not the process.
Yeah.
The process is I'm imposing my will upon them. Right.
Absolutely.
And I think people misunderstand that. And it's like, there is not one top fighter that's ever been that isn't very, very good at thinking on their feet, no matter the kind of fighting.
Yes.
And the whole myth of, oh God, and I love this, because whether you're talking about the military or the police, everybody thinks that the guys like you and me are knuckle draggers. And, and when they're talking about personality types, they're not wrong. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
When they're talking about mental capacity, though, it couldn't be further from the truth. Some of the smartest guys I've known are guys that do this sort of thing for a living, just incredibly intelligent, and not intelligent in the slow, let me think about it in research sense, but intelligent in this is the data set I have, this is the best decision I can make right now.
Exactly.
And they make it get done.
Yes. Right? Yes. And that's what I was talking about, that split second decision making that I was talking about. Being able to make that decision so quickly, but the outcome be the right outcome that we were looking for, whatever it might be. And when we start talking about processing time, basically what we're describing is our ability to process information and then react. That to me is when you start talking about why are guys in special operations, well, there's a lot of reasons why they're selected. Obviously, they're very hard, they're very durable, they're very resilient, but there's that cognitive level that sometimes we forget about. Their ability to their processing speed is a known thing. Their ability to, because what they've done is they've mapped out, for instance, I love to go back to CQB. You have a standard square room, center fed door. There's only so many ways that you can attack that room, right? And that becomes an understood staple understanding. Change one little thing in there. How fast can somebody process that change and make the right call? And by setting up that scenario, that's a great opportunity to see because I've seen it so many times, guys that don't skip a beat. They read the room, they recognize the new threat, and they just boom, they take it for action, that initiative. And then there are guys that just they stop, that process analysis, and by the time they make a decision in an assault scenario, it's too little, too late. Yeah. Even if it was the quote right call. So processing time to me is so valuable, and I've moved away from a correct response, and I'm thinking of it in terms of a positive response.
Yeah.
That way, it doesn't have to be the cookie cutter textbook response that might have been trained back in the schoolhouse. It got the job done, and now we can debrief and actually come back and say, you know what? Maybe we should change our SOPs to match that, integrate that so that it becomes a little bit more secondhand. It becomes more. We're now processing. We're taking what we've processed and we're now sharing it with other people that can then think of it in those same terms.
Well, and so I got a couple thoughts on this.
Please.
Yeah. So people that don't do a lot of CQB for a living misunderstand the purpose of the Arthur Murray dance steps. Put your feet here, right?
Totally.
They think that's the fight. That's not the fight. That's the search.
Yeah.
Once the rounds start flying, it's just a fight.
Yeah.
And you got to do whatever is correct. And that's how you get guys start doing free flow CQB, because they get really good at like playing off of the melody like a jazz player, right?
Yes.
But then you go to somebody, and I'm not knocking a regular infantry unit by any means. I mean, I'm not, right? But they don't understand that. That's a battle drill. I go in the room this way. I put my feet here. I stand here.
Exactly.
And yeah, when you watch a really high-level team unopposed, it's going to look a lot like that, just smoother and more efficient with nuances, right?
Yeah.
But when the rounds start flying, it becomes very much a fight.
Yeah.
And people misunderstand that.
Well, and I think that's a good point too to carry on when you talk about opposed and unopposed. Anything that I've learned in life always came from the business end, if you will. Yeah. Like it looked good, it sounded good, whatever. But the moment you put it into a pressure testing format, now we're like, oh shit, okay, this actually sucks. Like whatever it might have been. And that's the other thing that I feel like is I see it more and more, the conversation at least. I don't know what people are actually doing to quote pressure test techniques, skills. You see it. I think you see it most relevant in the civilian world in the new modern take on combatives.
Yes.
When you see that, you see a lot of the pressure testing going on, testing technique and seeing how things work. And I think that's great. That's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. But it needs to continue to expand beyond just the combatives world to integrative combatives, to how we fight with our guns, to how do we move in and out of things, how do we come from all of the aspects. And maybe not everybody needs to do that. Maybe that's pie in the sky. That's the assaulter in me still thinking of terms as an assaulter, and not everybody needs to be that way. But I like the idea behind the pressure testing. To me, it was always like, I can remember I was in third phase, and there was a combatives, the East and the West Coast back then had their own schools on combatives. And I can remember, the East Coast had their own way of doing it and the West Coast had their way. And we were in the training room, and we were talking, and I was listening to this guy talk about this, and I'm like, man, that just smells shitty. I don't know. I don't think that would work. And he's like, oh no, it works. We did it. I went through a 30-day class. It worked every time. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, let's go out behind the dunes. Let's see if it works in real time. And so we went out behind the dunes, and it wasn't pretty, but he's like, shit. Nobody ever really, every time we did it with a compliant partner, or we did it with this kind of concept that, okay, we're going, because it's like the thought process was never go full speed because you're going to hurt your training partner. I'm like, yep, absolutely. You're absolutely right. But, how do you know if it really works if you haven't gone full speed? And so the moment
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, brother.
That
goes back to like the traditional martial arts stuff, right? Like there's good techniques and good strategies in there.
Yeah.
But the way they're commonly taught involve a cooperative partner.
Exactly.
But the new thing with like BJJ and MMA and all that has been changing that. And you'll still see the same techniques. They just don't look the same because now they're adapted to the real world, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of this idealized state. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think
no, it's all good. I love that because this is the type of dialogue and conversation that sparks really, a deeper understanding. It's a back and forth. So, no worries there. But I mean, if we were to take that same pressure testing mindset to everything and anything that we do, what happens and is not for me. I mean, I'll tell you, because I was a scrawny guy on an elite level, and I have to work that much harder when I'm facing a guy your size or bigger. That's never like, as an assaulter, you run into the room and your first non-compliant is some dude that's bigger than you. That's the last thing you really want. So for me, I always had to work in that area to bring that game up. And I think that just kind of overflowed into all the other aspects of my profession. it wasn't just the combatives. It flowed into everything. I got to test this. I got to understand what it can and can't do. I got to understand what I can and can't do. And that to me gave me one of the most important characteristics, which was confidence. If I had that confidence, even if things were to go sideways on me, I still knew that I got it. I've got this. This is going to work, So, and I think in the book, I even talk about it, the difference between situational confidence and skills confidence, right? Which is what we're basically talking about. Skills confidence on a square range is great. You get up there and you do that retreat and build drill. Boom, you hit the mark, whatever the standard was, easy day. Okay, great. Now let's put you in a real situation where there's a real person that's actually back, barreling down on you. How well can you now shoot that build drill? Can you shoot it to the same standard? Because that's the other thing that I don't see, kind of like standing tall there is whatever that standard was. Let's just say it was a retreat and build drill that you did in, let's just say 5 seconds for argument's sakes. And then now you put a person there and a real person. And now you're shooting some sort of paint markers. And all of a sudden, this guy's got like some sort of soft stick that can even really kind of beat you down with, and all of a sudden it's like real. And you start
shock
to see
knife. He's got a shock knife.
I didn't want to go there, but yeah, absolutely. And you go, and all of a sudden your 5-second build drill is like, oh geez, no, this isn't working like I thought. It's like, okay, so that type of mentality, that type of training, and that's what I loved about the teams. We were able to do that. We had that liberty to go into the combatives room, go out to the range, go out to the, to their training facilities and just, hey, test this shit. See if it works. See if it's going to work. If it doesn't work, a lot of times when it didn't work and I'd come back, the old timers, the crusty guys would just say, yeah, I think I told you that. I'm like, yeah, you did, but I had to learn it for myself, damn it.
So when I was running the training for SWAT in Chicago, right, I did something that I'm really proud of because I don't know a lot of law enforcement units that do this. You see it a lot in special operations, but you don't see it so much on the law enforcement side of the house. Typically, force-on-force scenarios in law enforcement are typically very structured and scripted. Right?
Yeah.
And they want to, and I'm not saying there's no place for this because there is. There absolutely is a place for this. And they want that, to instill that desire to fight on no matter the cost and, that confidence that you're going to win.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you walk out of the room dripping in paint on a scripted scenario and you kept fighting, but what would that actually look like in real life? Right?
Exactly. 100%.
And then the other piece of it is, well, what happens when it's not scripted?
Yeah.
So I used to do this thing with my new guys on the SWAT team all the time where I would I love this. I asked for a 3-month operator's course thinking I would get maybe a month or 90 days or 60 days if I was lucky, right?
Uh-huh.
And they gave me all 3 months.
Holy shit.
So if I had known that, I would have asked for 6, but that's a different story. So we got to do a lot of shooting in CQB and combatives with these kids. And, when they came out of it, I got to say, for a law enforcement unit, I was incredibly proud of where these kids were at.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know land nav, they didn't know infill techniques, but they knew CQB. Like they knew it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and one of the things I did with them was we had this sim shoot house that we built ourselves. Side story, we got in a lot of trouble with the carpenters union for the city by doing that ourselves, but it was either do it ourselves or wait a year. So we just took the ass chewing. Yeah, we just took the ass chewing, right?
Yeah, it's worth it.
So I would take one squad of the new kids and have them go through breach point A. I'd take the other squad of the new kids and have them go through breach point B. And they each got a mission brief separately from the other squad, right?
Yeah.
Squad A would be told, okay, inside this residence is a team of well-trained terrorists from, insert country A, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been training up to do a hit on the president when he comes back to Chicago. This is when the president was from Chicago. You got to go in and stop these guys because if you don't, they're going to make the hit. And we got no time to call for a military unit. Like this just got to get done. So it's on you.
Nice.
So I go to squad B and give them the exact same briefing. So now you've got squad A and squad B both going after the others, each thinking they're the good guys in the exact same scenario.
I love that.
It did not look like a scripted CQB scenario at all.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And
but it was good, man. They learned so much from it. And I learned from it. I learned from their responses, watching what they did.
So, that's the kind of thing that I love, you just, because when you put it in that context, it's, the outcome is great because Yeah, okay, whatever the actual outcome was, but the lessons learned, the lessons that you can take away both individually and as a unit are huge. You see the again, when things are going smoothly, everybody's a rock star. But the moment things start to go sideways is where you really test the metal. Is where you really see who put the work in, who can mean. We always say this. We always want to remain cool under pressure. But until you're under pressure, you really don't know if you are going to be cool, And so when you put them in situations like that, you see those types of responses. And I love it when you think about unscripted responses, because in a lot of our, this goes back to a little bit earlier in our conversation, we talk about the scripted responses. Like, we used to do a class called multiple threat tactics, where the whole point behind the class was just every scenario you had more than one bad guy. And it started with some square range stuff, and then you rolled into force on force. And there's when we start talking about multiple threats in a context for civilian world, yeah, sure, there's justification. Maybe the bad guy has a friend or a buddy, or you're in an area that's infiltrated with a lot of them, or whatever the case might be. For law enforcement, it's a no-brainer. It's a very common thing. I think for the military, same thing. So when we started really kind of like doing this course, the part of the reason to do the course was because nobody had really addressed what are we going to do with multiple threats. When we're in a room and we're clearing a target, or we're hitting a target, and we're working, you're always thinking about next threat. The next threat is always in the back of your mind. You put the first threat down, the next threat. Where's my next problem? How do I solve it? But not so much in the civilian context. And then the way that it was solved mainly was with a scan. All right, if I have to deal with multiple threats, it's going to be because I'm going to use a scan. I'm going to use a scan so I can see what that multiple threat scenario is. Because on a flat range, it's always a target in front of you. It's very, very, very rarely you got multiple threats. And so we put these guys on the range, and we went through the standard stuff and whatnot. And like a very common drill that you shoot, and nothing against it. It's a great drill. Is the LPRES. And the LPRES is a great drill for multiple threats, but it's not just about that. It's about all these other things that comes along with the LPRES. But to use it as a tactic, that's where I had the grievance. It's like, this is not how you solve multiple threats, just going at it like it's an LPRES, because you never know. It's not going to always be the same. And unless you have multiple trophies as a grand master, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to burn down 3 guys that are coming at you with the same. The way I would explain it is this: hey, if you got 3 guys that are equally armed, equally spaced, at the same distance, you're more than likely facing a firing squad. That's the reality of it. The ability to put rounds on everybody at one in a way that's going to solve your problem is really hard. We had all these guys that had all their theories. I have this theory. I know this. This is what we do when we train this. We train this. I'm like, okay, great. So the point to get to the end here was the role players. We trained the role players. This was the hardest part for this class. We trained the role players to react in one of 3 ways, right? If they took 2 or more shots to the chest, they would go down. If they took 1 or more round to the head, they would go down. If they took a round to the arm, they just wouldn't fight with the arm. If they had, they would fight with the other arm. Or if they took a shot to the leg, they would take a knee. And it was really hard to train these guys and prep them for that, because it's the role player's job is so hard. But the moment that we gave them those parameters, like if you don't get hit twice in the chest, keep fighting. If you don't get hit twice in the chest, or once in the chest, once in the head, combinations, whatever you want to come up with, keep fighting. And what that meant was that the bad guys, or I'm sorry, the good guys in this situation were expecting this outcome. Okay, I'm going to put 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, and I win. And what we found was their hit ratio, their accuracy went terrible. I mean, we're talking less than like 25% hit ratio at that point. And they were bitching because they were getting lit up. They're like, hey, I fired 2 shots on this guy, 2 shots on this guy, 2 shots on this. And we're like, okay, all right. Every run, we would clean the paint off of all the clothing, all the protective gear, so that we can see it's clean. And yeah, sure, we would look and say, okay, well, this guy's got 1 hit in the chest. So he's going to, and basically if he got hit once, there was an internal timer that I would have the guy start with. Start counting down from 10 seconds. So simulating that you're bleeding out.
Right.
But the good guy is like, I shot him. I'm like, okay, well, you shot him once in the chest. He's bleeding out. He had 10 seconds to keep fighting. And what was so interesting is the role players eventually figured it out. They're like, oh, I see what you're doing here. This is great shit. And they started really playing it up. And so they were like, Jeff. I started counting down as soon as the first shot hit me in the arm, because any shot on the body was a 10-second countdown.
Right.
Not just
assuming it hits an artery. Yeah.
Exactly. simple, keep it all simple for everybody. So, man, I'll tell you what, the changes and right away, I didn't even have to start briefing the students on what they needed to do differently. It just became intuitive at that sense, because now that the bad guys are actually playing real bad guys, the tactics that they came to the class with that they thought would work, they found out weren't working. So it kind of carries over to what you were saying about when you hedged your team against each other and you were able to kind of see unscripted responses and see how things work. We saw some crazy shit in the multiple threat class. And I'm not going to say that you should do some of these things, because I think there's some limitations to it, but I couldn't argue with the results. I was like, dude, that worked. Good for you, man. That was a good response. I'm not shitting you. I had a guy jump out of a window. Literally jumped out. It was an open window. Full disclosure, wasn't like glass or anything, but it was an open window. He literally starts running, shooting as he's running, and jumped out of the window. And I'm like, index, can't really argue with that. Good tactic. You know, I mean, shit. Who am I to judge that that's not something that you should do?
As long as you're on the first floor.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It was it was all good. We were all on the first floor. But the point is that, you know, the moment that we started to put realism in there, and the takeaway from your force on force with your guys was, okay, let's look at how these guys work unscripted. How can they react to somebody that's thinking like them, that's acting like them?
Well, and I love too the fact, and I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I thought this was like a really good idea on my part. Giving them the same briefing. Mm-hmm. That means they're fighting their mirror image.
Yeah.
They're not fighting the threat they're assuming they're going to be fighting.
Yeah.
They're fighting somebody who's just as good as they are. And I think that's a big mistake we make. And I talk about this in my classes all the time, right? Is that in the civilian and law enforcement side of things, we neglect something that we never used to neglect in the military. And I don't know what phrases you guys use in your con ops or your op orders, but we would always talk about the enemy's most likely course of action. And their most dangerous course of action, right?
Yep.
Well, law enforcement and civilians, people tend to focus only on the most likely.
Yeah.
Not on the most dangerous. But
Good
like
point.
you said, you don't know what the fight's going to be, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, you look at the statistics. Yeah, it's 3 to 5 rounds, 3 to 5 feet, 3 to 5 seconds. Until it's not. Until it's not.
Oh, my favorites. That is like the best way to respond to that, because statistics work great until you're on the back end of one.
Yeah. And like, I've lived a long life that has led me to the understanding that the God of fate has a particular role for me to play in the universe. I am the guy that gets the outlier, right?
Yep.
If it's going to be 3 to 5 yards, 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 shots, that's not me. Yeah. I'm the guy who's getting the 40-yard shot in the food court, or, you know, exactly. I'm rolling around inside we don't have phone booths anymore. I'm rolling around inside a broom closet with a guy and we both got long guns. Like, that's going to be me, right? I'm not going to get the easy one to solve.
You know what's so funny? Because that's the other thing that people do, is they downplay that. They try to think of things, like you said, in the best possible outcome that they can expect, as opposed to the worst. And I'm not saying, because we just had a contingency for what was going to happen if shit went to the worst case scenario. It's not like we wanted it to go there, and our actions were hopefully designed to prevent us from going there. But the bad guy always has a vote. You know, our bad guys always get to choose how they want to react to our actions. And that a lot of times would basically dictate everything else from there, like how they acted. Like if they, we hit them hard and fast, and they, we get the upper hand, and they recognize that this is a no-win situation. Okay, great. But the moment they start fighting back and gain an inch, the moment they gain that inch, now it's like you were saying, it's a fight. It's a fight.
And something that just occurred to me, and I'm loving this conversation, because this is like kind of leading into something that I had a conversation the other day on a podcast, hasn't aired yet, with a guy who was a very, very good kickboxer back in the day. Nice. I believe he's still the only heavyweight kickboxer to ever get a knockout with a cartwheel kick in a full contact fight.
Just putting that together, heavyweight cartwheel knockout.
Yeah. Really good dude, right? He's also, a well-rounded martial artist, does BJJ and stuff. He's a law enforcement guy, runs a SWAT team, right? All that stuff, right? And one of the latest things that he kind of turned me on to that is like it's just starting to get really big in the grappling world is ecological training.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing from our conversation that we at least had, both you and I at least had bits of that in the things we taught in the past. Not because I'd learned about ecological training. It was like a happy accident. It was like the happy little accidents on the painting with the guy with the white man's afro, right? But it's such a powerful training tool, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Go do this and figure it out.
It's so true. Like, and I love this because what I believe is that you have to have tools, right? So in this case, tools are tactics, right? So you have to have a tactic for this, a tactic for that, a tactic for this. You get really good at those tactics, and then you just let the situation dictate how you react, how you respond. And I firmly believe that. And I didn't really put two and two together about that type of thought process and ecological training until you just mentioned it. And I could see the corollary. I can see how easy it is to jump to that. And it makes the world of sense, because I'm not telling you, like you said, I'm not telling you how to do it. Here are the tools, you know, figure it out on your own. But it really helps, I think, put it in a better frame context, if you will. When you can think of it in those terms, then there's really kind of, I don't want to say like there's a wrong answer anymore. You're weighing everything out, and you're doing what works or what sounds best or what looks the best or what will provide you with the best outcome. And that, to me, because it boils down to this, and this, I know that you are familiar with this term, which is, this is a thinking man's game.
Yes.
You have to be able to think your way out of these problems. If you're just a wind up robot toy that I'm just going to turn and you're going to go and do your thing, I mean, I got no use for that. You know, I need to have somebody that can think on their feet and act accordingly. And that's hard to train. That is hard to train.
Yeah. And how do we create that, right? And I think it sounds, because I know I had like ideas back in the day, and it sounds like you were doing stuff on it too. And I think it does kind of tie into, and I'm not done with my trip down that particular rabbit hole yet, so I don't want to sound like I'm an expert in ecological training, because I'm not.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But that seems to be kind of an approach that prioritizes the ability to think on your feet, like we talked about.
Yeah.
You know, like for firearms, like here's your chunks, you know, here's your draw, here's your reload, here's your target to target transitions, here's how you shoot on the move, here's how you do position, entry, and exit. Now, how do you put all those together to fix this problem?
Yeah, exactly. I love that, because that's exactly how you need to build that skill. And then once you have that inventory or repository of skill, then you just pull what is necessary to solve the problem at hand. And it's the transitional spaces that is going to make or break you. It's how quickly you can recognize that, pull this out, solve the problem, move to the next problem. So that, to me, is one of the most misunderstood concepts within the assault world.
Yeah.
Being able to look at it in those terms. For instance, going back to the assault world, push door versus a pull door. I need to have an understanding when I'm the number one man, how I'm going to operate that from a push-pull scenario. And then once I get up to it, if it was brief that it's a pull and it's a push, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I have these
it shouldn't
tools.
matter.
No.
Well, and so I did not come up with this quote, but I sure stole it. And I've used it ever since the first time I heard it. And I'm going to use it again every time I teach CQB is, you've been opening doors your entire life. Open the door.
Yeah. It's not that hard. Yeah, it isn't that hard. But the point is, like, there are what we call essential skills, core skills. Like you were saying, the draw stroke, multiple threats, reloads, malfunctions, position work, you name it. Those are essential skills that have to be mastered. And once you master them, the problem is going to solve itself at that point. You're going to know what to do because you have this inventory of tools available. And it's the way that I've looked at training ever since the Navy. It's how I look at training now. I know that sometimes it's not in vogue. It sounds like it's coming back in vogue, but it just looks different how we do it, because I don't try to tell you how to solve the problem. I give you the tools and I make you solve the problem.
And it's back to like going back to CQB, right? You know, the Arthur Murray dance steps, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying those don't have value, and I'll never say they don't have value.
Absolutely.
But what they're like, and I'm gonna use a musician's analogy here, even though I'm tone deaf, which is like God's cruelest joke, because I love music, but I'm not the guy you want to play music, trust me. But it's like a good jazz musician, right? They always play off of the melody, they improvise.
Yeah.
But they master the melody first.
Exactly.
You can't play off the melody until you master the melody. And then Then the free flow CQB opens up. Then the ability
man.
to respond as a one-person fighter, whether, law enforcement, military, or civilian. Then that opens up, what do I do in the fight? But you got to play the scales first. That's the draws and reloads. You got to learn to play the melody, and that's the grab my wrist this way.
Yep.
But there's a limited amount of value in that. Like once you get that down pat, you've got to kind of discard it and move along. And if you look back to the martial arts world, all the really greats all said that. It's just nobody does it unless they're one of the really greats.
Exactly.
Well, once you master it, you move past it. You're done.
It's so true. And it's like I love the Arthur Murray dance step routine. Like people get all butthurt about that, but I'm like, we have to start from a known because we're ultimately trying to get you to the unknown. And in the beginning, there's a lot of attention paid towards that, like this step versus that step, whatever it might be. And I think sometimes people get wrapped up in that. I'm like, that allows us to train a dangerous activity in the safest way possible. Once you have built up an understanding of your situational awareness of where you are, where your team is, where your targets are, that footwork becomes less important, less relevant. And it's now more about how you can put all those other pieces together. And that's how I responded to it. Like sometimes when we were teaching to a very, very young team, like why we're wasting so much time on this. I'm like, well, it's not, first of all, it's not a waste of time. We're spending this much time on it because we have to. We'll spend whatever time is necessary for you to master this, or at least become proficient. And my point is that the question came up because they didn't think there was value in that. And then once we got to the mount site, and once we started doing like multi-building, multi-level hits, all of a sudden, like they're not thinking about their feet. They're not thinking about which foot to go first. They're not doing any of that. But they are also not making mistakes in that regard.
And that, like, whether you're talking about the footwork or the shooting, right? Like, that goes back to, that has to be unconscious. Because if it's not, you can't consciously make the big decisions. You can't bring in the information you need. You can't be aware of your environment.
It's so
like a really interesting thing happened to me when I first, because I didn't start competitive shooting until very late in my career, right? Like I'd already retired from 20th Group. I was doing the police department without the Army at that time, and I was on SWAT. And I got a result I didn't expect. So I was doing it basically, at first I was doing it to cross train for my shooting. Because these guys could shoot better than me, so I wanted to be able to shoot like them, right?
100%.
Didn't expect any sort of tactical carryover at all, because it's obviously not tactical. And then right about the time I made masterclass, all of a sudden my CQB like jumped up in skill.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. It's because the shooting had become so subconscious for me that my brain had more bandwidth for everything else.
So beautifully spoken. It was something that, like, in any of our CQB classes, because I saw that so easily. It was so easy to see who were the safety risks. I'm walking the catwalk and I'm watching a team down below. It was easy to know who my potential safety risks were based on their performance on the flat range. How they handled the gun, how they shot the standards, how they worked, how they set their gear up. And I don't mean to be elitist in that sense, but that's what the beautiful thing about experience does for you, is it gives you that perspective. So I would talk to my staff and I'd say, okay, this guy we got to pay particular attention to. We'd set up a run. We knew that he was part of that stick. We'd be like, okay, this guy, we might need to be very conscious of that field of fire that this guy's going to be rolling into, because there is a potential right here because of this. We're putting so much information on him, he may not see his partner because there's so much, sensory stuff coming at him that he's just overwhelmed. That wouldn't happen to somebody that has really hard shooting skills. They're not going to be, when we put a complex problem like that, like whether it's a hostage scenario or a potential like long shot or something along the line that really taxes the shooting skill, somebody that has good shooting skills is not going to be bogged down by that. But somebody that doesn't, and now they become, either they put themselves in an unsafe position or they do something that's unsafe as a result. And so we caught a lot of crap because we would have we called it a CQB safety test. It's tough, but it's not like impossible. And if you're part of an organized team, the thought process is that you put the time in to get to this level. And if you didn't, we had to kind of like scale it. So and this was before force on force was, paint was as prolific as it is now. And so what would happen is we'd put the team through the test. If they didn't pass the test, so if like 70% of the team didn't pass the test, we didn't do any live. It was just all paint. It was all paint. If more than 70% passed, but a shooter didn't pass, then they just shot paint only. So even if we were doing live, they just shot paint, because it was the only way to control that risk and not like hamstring the rest of the team. I didn't want to create a scenario that was within the skill set of that lower shooter and penalize the rest of the team. The rest of the team was good. We wanted to push them, but to do it safely, the only way we could do it was we had to identify who the risks were. If they didn't meet the standard, we just put them with paint. And some guys got butthurt by it, but others recognized, okay. And team leaders, I should say, really were like, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So our SFALC for 20th group did the exact same thing.
Yes.
If you got below a certain score on the run and gun at the end of the flat range section, you want a blue barrel for CQB.
Yeah.
And
and you know what? It's not the end of the world. People would get all butthurt. And that the people that would get butthurt were in it for the wrong reason. Their ego was driving everything.
Yep.
It was so easy to see. And I remember we had a team, and this team, really was protesting our rules. And we call it a leaderboard. And on the leaderboard, we have like the most common safety violations, and we have each of the sticks in line there. And so if you do a run and you get a safety violation, you go outside, you put a tick mark by the safety violation and your name, and then you go do something. Usually it was like a sled pull or some shit like that, tire pull. And then the point being, try not to make that mistake again, dumbass. So when the team leader came out, who missed the training, he didn't come out to any of the first 2 days, which I think are the most important for the team leader to be at. He came out, and we show him the lead, like the team is really protesting. They want to be able to go live, and this is the day that we would normally start the live, and we're telling them, okay, these guys need to have paint, these guys can go live. And he's kind of like pulls us aside and he's talking to us, and he's like, hey, listen, the team really wants to be able to do this live. I feel like it's really important. I'm like, okay, all right, well, let's come over to this leaderboard. Let me show you what we have here. You see all these tick marks? These tick marks by the names of these people are also the same people that failed the CQB safety test, right? So do you see the corollary that I'm trying? And he like his eyes opened up. He was like, talk to me, say that to me again. I remember he literally wanted to better understand what I was saying. And we took him up on the catwalk and helped him kind of observe what we were seeing. And he's like, oh shit, And he was even livid. He's like, how come they have so many safety violations? I'm like, well, they're kind of doing their own thing. They're getting, and so it was really insightful and rewarding to see that team leader understand when you put together the guys that were having the most safety violations with the guys that failed the CQB test, it was a no-brainer. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm going to back your play. I'll tell the team to unfuck themselves and let's go.
And as a side note, I want to get your opinion on this because I have my own and I want to hear yours.
Please.
Well, I'm going to lead into this by saying something that everybody who's ever trained with me, either in a class or like just, individually, my friends all know this opinion of mine. I absolutely hate the saying, train like you fight. I hate it. Like it makes me want to punch people's faces in. It's like, show me one NFL football team that does nothing but put on the pads and scrimmage every practice. You're not going to find one. Yeah. Show me one MMA fighter that does nothing but step in the octagon with pads and try to kill each other every time they practice. You're not going to find one. Yeah. But that would be training like you fight, right? Yeah. Don't train like you fight, train for the fight. And when I say that, I'm not saying that you should never do full scale mock-ups of the real thing. You absolutely should. Yeah. 100% should. But those are validations. Those are your feedback. You get your skills with the other stuff. Yeah. And then you're testing your skills with the full on. And I think people take live fire, shoot house CQB, and I want to hear your opinion on this. Yeah. They take it as like once I get to a certain point, that's all I should do. Yeah. No. And I don't agree with that at all.
100% do not agree with that.
You can't pressure check anything in live fire because of the safety. You got to pressure check it in paint.
Dude, I remember when we went through phases. I'm sure your community went through phases where safety requirements and restrictions became tougher, and then they might loosen up and they'd get tougher. We'd have an accident, they'd get and And it was
all the
very
time.
frustrating. Yeah, it was very frustrating because, we're doing, let's just call it level 1 CQB, but we're going to be operating at level 5. Right. So it just didn't make sense. And so finally I was just like, all right, fuck it. We're just going to run through this. And we were on a trip and we didn't have a sufficient enough paint rounds. And I was like, just fuck it. I would rather get dry runs that are complicated than canned runs live fire.
Oh yeah.
That are just super simple that a baseball team could do. I could get a little league team to come in here and do that shit, teach them just the simple stuff. And it was a divergent viewpoint because of that same idea. We need to be doing this live fire. Agree, we need to. But with these restrictions, it's so watered down. I'd rather pull the live ammo and just get in there and get fucking crazy with some stupid shit. I mean, just throw some hard problems at the guys like you did with your force on force against the guys, your team on your blue on blue. That to me is great. Like, let's see what happens when we start changing the scenarios that don't favor us. Because that's the other thing that a lot of times we do when we set scenarios, we set the scenarios that favor us. Oh, that's important, but that's not how it should be.
So here's something I used to do with the guys we were training and with me and like my main CQB instructor. His name was Paul Emilio. Never been in the military. He'd done a couple of MMA fights, like he was a martial artist, right? Not a competitive shooter, never been in the military, only been a cop. I shouldn't say only, but that was his job experience.
Sure.
If you taught him land nav and infill, he could have walked into an SMU. Like, the kid was that talented.
Nice.
Like, he was just,
Love that.
He didn't have the whole spectrum, but what he did work on, he was as good as anybody around, like no matter the background.
Yeah.
So we used to take, and our class sizes varied because this is another thing I'm very grateful for that my bosses were very good about. We didn't have a quota. You know what I mean? Like we were able to say, no, we're not taking 10 because we need 10. We're taking 7 because they're the only 7 that make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But whatever the class size was, at least once a class, I would go with Paul and I would tell the students, okay, now it's your guys' turn. You guys go in there and set up nasty stuff for us. And Paul and I would run it as a 2-man team. Doing SEMs.
Yeah.
Dude, that was so much fun. And I'm not going to say that ever got us, but it was just so much fun.
Dude,
and the cool thing about it, though, and this is something I didn't expect either, that ties into, like, I have a broader and deeper understanding of training now, right? When you get good at 2-man CQB, working with an entire team becomes so simple. It becomes so easy.
It is. It's so compartmentalized.
And people like, well, it's not the same techniques. No, it's not, because you're triaging threats and you're prioritizing and you're doing things differently because you just got 2 guys. But that's not the thing of building. It's building that bandwidth, like we talked about earlier. If I can solve a problem with 2 guns, how hard is it to solve with 65 like I had on the SWAT team?
That's one of the reasons why when we start teaching in, we call it your, swim buddy, swim pair, basically just 2 guys. You learn 2-man CQB as the basics for assaults for that reason. Because if you can master 2, the moment I bring you to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, it's just like, it's not that, I shouldn't say, like you said, it's not that it's not complicated, but the ask is so much easier.
Yes. And we didn't do that in our schoolhouse, at least when I went through for SF. Our first element was a 4-man element.
Oh, really?
That was our smallest number. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And, if somebody made me king for a day and I could go back in time, I would do exactly like you're talking about, because I saw the benefits of it on SWAT.
So I was lucky. My swim buddy was my sea daddy, and when I was a new guy, so everything that I did, I had him. I was in his hip pocket basically, and that was very fortunate for me because he was very squared away, and we started as the new guy in the platoon. I couldn't work in the 4-man element until he was comfortable in the 2-man element. So he and I would just go through and work together over and over and over and over again. And then, because it was his ass, it was like, if he's saying I'm good to go into the 4-man, then the rest of the team is like, okay, we feel good now. Bring him on. So it's like, because, back then we know so much more now about training and assaults and all that other business. And, I'm not saying that it was risky or unsafe. It just, we were doing what we knew how to do at the time.
Yeah.
And so that, just breaking it down to having me work with him only for like the first full day, I didn't even get to go in and do a 4-man until I think it was probably like the end of the third day. I just had to keep working, and everybody else is doing 4-man runs, and I'm just in there doing, this little 2-man run. It's so fun. I mean, I loved it because, you know how it is when you're a 4-man element. That means that you get only 1/4 of the work, or 1/4 of the shooting, or 1/4 of the fun. So, but when you're a 2-man, that means you get 50% of the shooting, 50% of the movement, 50% of the fun. So, it's kind of like, when I look at it in those terms, I'd much rather do 2-man all than the other, because you just get more, it's more training, more actions on, more fun.
This brings me to something that I'd like to bring up for the guys listening out here that weren't part of our communities, right? One of the things I'm proud of, and there's a lot of things I'm proud of where I came from for the community of people. Like, there's a lot of things I'm proud of them for. But one of the things that makes me the proudest is the lack of ego-driven resistance to change. I see it all the time in law enforcement. I see it in the civilian side.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it never existed in SF. Like, I remember when the war on terror started, and guys, there wasn't the combat experience then that there is now after 20 years of the GWAT, right? But over the course of the GWAT, I saw people, like in the beginning, when I first became an SF cat, if you did the high ready, people would yell at you and say you should go join the Navy, right? And I'm sure you guys did the same thing for the low ready, I'm sure, right? So, awesome. grow your hair out and get a movie deal. Get out of here.
Yeah.
But by the end of my time in, everybody was doing both.
Yeah.
Right. And everything on the Army side was just dynamic in the beginning. Yeah. It was, hair on fire. Right.
Yeah.
And then by the end, we started to understand the importance of the way you guys did it.
Yeah.
And that kind of deliberate clearing. And I got to train a lot with you guys at Virginia Beach, actually through the SWAT team, because they would come to Chicago to do hits for venues. Yeah. So they invited the team to Virginia Beach to kind of repay us for it. And obviously they couldn't officially train us, but they could supervise the training for safety reasons and give us their feedback, right?
Yeah.
And I saw the same things with them. I saw that they had picked up stuff from my community as well.
Absolutely.
And I am very proud of the overall SOF community for that willingness to accept something that's good, no matter if it comes from your rivals. I mean, we're friendly rivals, but you know what I mean,
dude.
And that's something I'm very proud of.
Absolutely, and I will support that all day long, because I believe that is the reason why we are as good as we are, is because that rivalry exists. You look at the Army-Navy game. I love that game. Not because of my love for football, but because I love to be able to talk to my green brothers and give them shit about this, and like, oh, is it going to be another year? Because that drives each element, each organization, each individual to want to strive to be better.
Yes.
But at the same time, because you're willing to want to go and pay the price to be better, your ego, your humility is more open. You're more willing to, okay, if I want to be better, I might need to start thinking about things from another perspective. I can't be so siloed in my thought process. I saw the silo approach that ultimately, because I remember the first time I went on a training trip to represent, I went by myself, went to I don't remember what it was some school. And my parting words from my guys were, you're going, you represent, you find out all this information, you bring it back, you teach us so that we can be better. And I was like, yes, sir, I can do. And that always left because it was, I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was an Army. It could have been an Army school, but it might have been an Air Force school. I can't remember what it was now. And it didn't matter what I learned, who taught it to me. Bring it back, because the one mantra that I remember was, take whatever you can to become a more improved, lethal warfighter. That's it. That's the goal. Improve your lethality on the battlefield. Doesn't matter who it came from. Doesn't matter what it was. Bring it back. If it makes us better and more survivable, basically, we want it.
Yep. If you truly want to master your craft, you've got to set ego aside, I believe. And not in the sense of not being proud. Like, you should be proud. You should absolutely be proud. That should fuel you. That should drive you. That competitive nature of I want to be the best should be there. But the moment you get, I'm going to get kind of zen for a second, so forgive me.
Please. I love it.
The moment you get attached to appearing a certain way to others, and that's what ego really is. The moment you do that, you're not learning.
Yeah.
The moment you like, I'm guilty of it too. Like I'll go to a shooting school and I'll be like, well, I got to burn this drill down and be better than everybody else. instead of thinking about, okay, what can I take from this drill? Now I'm thinking about how can I perform this drill to look better? And that's the wrong approach.
Oh man, but I'll tell you what, first of all, I love that. I do. Because, it was a hard pill to swallow the first time I lost a teammate in a combat theater. It was a really hard pill to swallow because you have this idea that you're invincible, that you can do anything, that nothing can stop you. And it was really hard on me. And I was fortunate to be in the early part of my career that helped frame the rest of my career to have this mindset, which is I can have the best team, the best mission, the best gear, and I can still get killed by some fucking asshole who is not literate, wipes his hand with his ass. It doesn't matter. I can still get killed by them. So my humility changed quite a bit from being invincible. Like you put me on the front, I'm going. Doesn't matter. To then all of a sudden I need to be a little bit more humble in my approach. I need to be a little bit more recognizing of the threats and what that really means. Like we can't predict this sort of thing. We have to recognize that it could go sideways on us super fast. So be humble in the sense of be humble also to me translated to being hungry.
Yes.
Being humble translates to being hungry, knowledge, information, talent, skill, experience. So be humble because that opens the door for you to be hungry. And then, man, the wheels, you're golden at that point.
So I've got kind of I don't usually tell war stories on the podcast, but I'm going to tell a little funny war story real quick.
Go for it, man.
To illustrate a time where I was not humble enough.
Oh, brilliant.
Right?
I love it, man.
So we hit this cave complex, right, out in the middle of nowhere. And we get resistance at the opening to the cave mouth. And I tend to be an aggressive person. I have like an aggressive personality to me. I know that's a shock to you. I know you wouldn't expect that. People don't see that in me, but it's there. Right. So like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to kill everybody. Right. Yeah. My captain has the record in the SF regiment for the longest time in command of an ODA.
Wow.
You can't do what he did anymore. It can't be done.
Wow.
Because so first off, active duty, they get 18 months, maybe 3 years if they're really lucky, but usually it's about 18 months to 2 years.
Wow.
Right. So in the Guard, that gets doubled.
Oh, nice.
So he was in command of this ODA in the Guard and then kept turning down promotion to major.
Nice.
So finally they told him he had to take the promotion to major or he'd get riffed. So he did something they don't let you do anymore. He just reverted to warrant. Just like, okay, I'm just going to go be a warrant. Like now there's like a whole process now, but at the time you just kind of do it,
Yeah.
So then he commanded that same team as a warrant.
Nice.
So he was in command of the same ODA for like 20 years. So you talk about a guy with experience. Shit. Yeah. Like that's never been done and it will never be done again. They have changed the rules so that you can't do what he did.
That's hilarious.
Which leads me to an observation. I don't think you're really successful in your career if there's not at least one rule they created because of you.
That's a good observation. I like that.
I have done that. And I've done it in the military. I've done it in the police, and I've even done it in competitive shooting. So I think
love
that.
It.
But yeah.
That's
so
great.
anyway, I want to just go in this cave and start shooting, right? And Lenny grabs me by the drag handle and pulls me back, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go kill him." And he goes, "We're in the middle of nowhere. We have a JTAC." Like, what? He goes, "We're gonna go out a click where they can't shoot us and drop a JDAM." And I'm like, oh, okay. So
but
I have
it's
this
like,
it's just a smarter way to do it. Like why, it's like you said, it's a dangerous thing. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. All it takes is that one bullet that says to whom it may concern.
I love that one. That's a good one.
So we go back where they can't even shoot us and we drop a JDAM and the whole mountain gets leveled, right? I have a great picture of my JTAC standing there like the first Iron Man movie where he's got his hands outstretched like this.
Oh my God.
And behind him, the entire mountain is exploding.
Dude, no way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I got it
I
on my
can't.
phone.
You'll have to show that to me one day.
I will. But
Oh my God.
so that is like the shining example to me of like times when I should have been a little more humble and a little wiser and been like, oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, I just wanted to fight. And he's like, well, why?
that too, I can appreciate that story. I don't have one nearly as cool as that one. That one's just super cool with the Iron Man pose. But that there are many times in my career that I was fortunate enough to have somebody smarter, more experienced than me pull me aside and kind of show me the way. And I'm so grateful for that because I mean, there was a lot of stupid shit that I did or stupid shit that I almost did. And I don't have probably as many rules named after me as you do, but there was plenty that were probably in the running, and just being able to have that level of experience to guide you through that process and share with you the merits of what it takes to actually be your very best, because that right there is a hard and fast rule for you now. So like if you were put in a similar situation as a team lead or a higher authority and you saw a younger junior guy doing the same thing, you would have this opportunity to share that experience, which to me is the money. It's being able to share that with the way you just shared it with me, the humility and how that came about, sharing it with the rest of the world that's listening. That to me is the value. Is where it really impacted you, obviously, but it's impacting people even more and more and more because we're able to share that.
Well, and your community says it really well. And I've heard it several times from guys in your community, and I've heard it, on the internet and videos and stuff. So it's got to be a pretty common saying with you guys. Why run to your death?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why run to your death? Why?
Dude, the first, I have to tell you this. I have to tell you this story. It was a common scenario where we would do a certain type of movement. I won't go into details of it now, but I questioned it. I questioned it because I felt like it put us in a really dangerous situation. I'm like, well, why can't I just shoot him from all the way over here? Why do I have to go all the way up there? And it was so controversial asking the question because I was challenging conventional wisdom at the time, doctrine, if you will. But for me, and that's another thing that I would leave you with is one thing that I found very valuable is I am naturally inquisitive by nature. My curiosity is one of my superpowers. And I try to tell people, hey, listen, I'm going to probably ask you a lot of questions. I'm not insulting you. I'm not judging you. I'm just curious. I'm genuinely wanting to know more. It's when I don't ask you questions that you need to worry.
Yeah.
If I'm not asking you questions, it's because I don't feel like you have anything to offer.
Yeah, you've already tuned it out.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, man, when I questioned that, to me, what I heard was, shut up, this is the way we've always done it. Right? Which basically translates to, we don't want to change because, and they didn't have, the group that we were working with did not have the capacity to take a step back and think of it from more humble, like, hey, why do we have to go all the way up there? Why? I mean, I'm shooting this rifle that's good out to 550. Why can't I shoot him at 15 meters as opposed to the 5 meters? Why can I can increase my survivability just by being this far back, because there's that reactionary gap. And it was to me, that was a defining moment because I saw the institutional friction about change and about, not being able to change so easily. And luckily the GWAT kind of ramp that up a little bit. It's no longer 20 years to make a change. It's more like, 20 months, which I'll take. But, that was another interesting observation to me, is like being able to ask the why, understand the why better, and watching guys react to that in a negative way, like feeling like they're being challenged. And I'm like, no, I just want to know what's your rationale? Why do I have to shoot him at 5? And if that rationale exists, if that rationale, will it also be the same if I'm at 15 meters?
Yeah.
If your rationale is so dogmatic at the 5 meter line, what about it? Is it still the same at the 15? And if it is at the 15, it makes more sense for me to do it at the 15.
Something that happened on SWAT, actually. I was teaching vehicle bailouts to my guys. And we had a guy that had just come through the operator's course. Like he was brand new on SWAT. Like he just made it to the troop, right? And the way we did our training there was you had, each squad had their training days. Then I had training days. Like they had training days where they ran the training.
Yeah.
There was training days where I ran the training, or my guys, the guys that worked for me.
Yeah.
And there were training days that were the whole team, right?
Gotcha.
And it was just kind of mixed up in the schedule. And we were on where it was a squad level, you would call it troop probably. It was a squad level training day. And I was running the training and I was teaching vehicle bailouts. And one of the brand new guys came up with a little wrinkle on how to free the seatbelt. I don't even remember what it was now, but it was just brilliant. And I was like, okay, that's going to be in the next edition of our manual. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I've been here a day. I'm like, I don't care.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I don't care. It makes
truth
sense.
Is truth.
Yeah,
Truth
it makes sense.
I love that.
And like, I never want to lose that as I get older, because I'm pushing in years now. But I don't want to stop training and learning for a couple reasons. One is I love it, right?
Yeah.
Two is I think it is the key to staying young physically and mentally, right? You keep that neuroplasticity, you keep moving.
Big one.
I've got injuries that are going to plague me, but I'm going to work around them, because if I don't work around them, they're going to get worse.
Yeah.
My movement's going to get worse. My fitness is going to get worse, right?
Yeah.
So I never want to stop that. And what I've seen in people is I've seen people when they get to a certain age, and I'm starting to get there. And I want to avoid this at all costs. Rigidity in my thinking.
Oh man.
And it's a different quality than intelligence. It's got nothing to do with how smart somebody is.
Yeah.
But the moment where you're no longer willing to evaluate your stance in light of new data is when you start getting rigid.
I'll tell you, man.
And I never want to be like that.
First, I will back your play 100% on that, because one of the things that I found to be so incredibly valuable is the ability to articulate an argument. And so I always look, and so sometimes the term argument can have a very negative connotation. You can replace it with debate if you'd rather.
Yeah.
But basically what we're doing is we're evaluating each other's positions, and I'm providing you with the what I believe to be the strong points. You're going to provide me with your strong points. And then if we're really good, and what I mean by good, humble, experienced, open-minded, we'll look at all of those and we'll truly pick what is the most beneficial, no matter where it came from. And to me, like when I've had a discussion with somebody about a tactic, let's just say a tactic, whatever it is, be like, okay, I need to understand your why. Why are you suggesting doing it this way? And then I will then give you my why. This is why I feel like I should do it this way, or I do it this way. Let's discuss these points and let's figure out, is this better or is that better? Because I don't care where it came from. I do not care who came up with it. Just like the new guy, didn't matter. If it's better, I want it. Bottom line.
Yeah, and I think this is a common failing, and it's something else that I want to guard against. I've been guilty of it too. I think it's human nature. We've all been guilty.
Of course,
right?
We're human.
I don't want to disregard a piece of data based on my feeling about the character of the individual who gave it to me.
Ooh, good one. That's hard.
There are people that I cannot stand in this industry that are still very sharp and smart.
Yep.
And I should not automatically disregard something that they put out there just because I know that they're not people that I like.
Kudos to you, man. That is not easy, because now you're talking about feelings, emotions.
Yes.
And that's a tough one for guys like us. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a great sign, and I use this term loosely, of maturity.
Well, I should hope I have a little bit at this point. I worked really hard for it. It was a long journey.
That's what makes it more of a blessing, is that it came at a big cost. It came at such a huge cost. But that is a hard thing, to be open-minded. Again, we can shift the conversation to politics, which, to be open-minded to I've always, I won't go down the political spectrum, but if I saw that there was an idea proposed by a Democrat that I thought had merit, I liked it because of the merit, not because of who proposed it. It just so happened to be a Democrat, and I'm not. I'm not going to dismiss it because it came from a Democrat.
And the convert. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
and the converse too, I think, is just as important, right? We should not blindly follow what someone says, regardless of our opinion of that individual. Whether we're talking in the tactical realm, politics, our friends, like, oh, he's a great guy, I really like him. Doesn't mean he's always right. I know for a fact, I'm not always right.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean?
And it's great because that's one of the reasons why I love having, like, my staff. We've kind of moved on a little bit, but man, I'll tell you what, having the staff that is able to keep you humble at the same time. Hey, I would always tell the guys, hey man, if I'm ever out of line, I expect you to put me back. If you think that I'm not doing the right thing, or I'm being closed-minded, or I'm whatever, I expect you to tell me and put me in my place.
Oh, that gives me a segue here too. So when I started being in charge of people, right, in both careers, I discovered very quickly, you know, when you're coming up and you're frustrated, like the boss you like and respects doesn't seem to see the flaws you see in one of your teammates.
Sure.
You're like, why can't he see this guy as a suck up? Why can't he see this guy as a spotlight ranger?
Of course.
Why can't he see that? And then you become a boss and you're like, I don't know if that guy's a spotlight ranger or not. I only know what he shows me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a hard lesson to learn. Is that
interesting?
And I find it as an instructor too, right? As an instructor, it's like, I don't necessarily know. I only have the view from above.
Yeah.
I don't have the view from the left and right.
Yeah.
I'm not the boots on the ground anymore when it comes to that sort of information, right?
So true.
And I think that's something else I think is so important, is to understand the perspective shift based on position gives you both insights and blind spots. Your perspective as a trooper, you know, whether you're a young ranger, whether you're a new guy in an ODA, whether you're a new guy in a SWAT team, your perspective there gives you strengths and insights, but it also has blind spots to it compared to the perspective of the guy above you.
Absolutely.
But his has blind spots too. And understanding that and navigating that is something I think that carries over to the rest of life, right?
Yeah.
And I think people miss that a lot.
One of the things that I've always really appreciated about how NSW does things is the team format, right? The team, like, it's a team, and everybody, like, it's in our name. I'm not saying that SF doesn't have teams. Of course they do, but it's in our name. It's part of our lineage, if you will, that we're a team. And the way that I always interpreted that is that like you said, I'm going to have plenty of blind spots. My hope is my swim buddy is aware of those blind spots, covers down on them, and helps me with them, because I'm going to do the same for him. I'm going to recognize, because I want him to be at the very best of his game, because if he's at the best of his game, then when he's covering down for me, I know he's good to go. And then it was that kind of like relationship that was awesome. Yeah.
And then, like, as a leader, like, I always tried to identify as a leader early on in any new position, the people who I could trust to be honest to me.
Yeah. Man.
And a lot of times leaders don't like that, because it doesn't always make you feel good.
It's so funny we're talking about this.
And you don't have to agree with them all the time either, but just having that input, having that information is invaluable.
So it's ironic, because I'm doing reviews right now, and I think one of the, like, I loved to hate the eval process from the Navy. On the one hand, I felt like sometimes it was just a wordsmithing game. And on paper, like when you would see your evals and whatnot. But what I came to love was when I sat down with whoever it was, whether it my OIC, whether it was my training department lead, whether it was the XO himself, and had an actual, like, heart to heart. Because I always, like, I want to know that I'm doing good, but not at the sacrifice of not being able to fix what I'm doing bad at. Like, I would rather my XO come out and just light my ass up. He's like, hey man, you're a fucking 4.0 sailor, but you're fucking up over here. You're screwing this shit up over here. Why? And I'd be like, I don't have an answer for you, sir, but I will remedy the problem. So, like, for me, it sucks to hear it. I hate it, but I also need it. I want it. And it's that dichotomy that exists in criticism or feedback that we have the struggle with. It's like, on the one hand, you want it. On the other hand, it's hard to swallow.
Well, and I don't think growth ever comes from comfort.
Oh, fuck no. Oh, man. That's one of my favorites right there. I preach that to my kids all the time. I'm like, hey, if you're comfortable right now, you're not living. You're not appreciating life, what it has to offer. The metaphor that I use is something that I know that you can appreciate, but it's like the sharpening of a blade.
Yeah.
The only way that you can get that knife sharp is through work, through the constant honing of that. And that honing process is stripping away portions of that metal. That struggle of the blade being honed is going to make that blade sharper. The process of honing is going to make it sharper, but the honing process is the struggle. And when I try to get that across to my boys and tell them, I'm like, hey man, if you're comfortable, you're not doing something right. You're probably doing something wrong. And
it doesn't mean you shouldn't be happy or enjoy your life. It's not that at all, right? Yeah, but I honestly think that true long-term self-satisfaction comes from that process.
Yeah, I agree.
Like when you talk to people that don't really have anything they're working on to be good at, they never seem like they're really happy. And I don't mean happy in the moment. Like everybody has moments where they're happy. That's not what I mean. But dude, long-term, consistent contentment with yourself, right? Self-satisfaction.
Man, that's a good question. That's a whole other subject. And Matt, I would love to keep talking. I've got another call in about 5 minutes. And I want to give you time to do your wrap up.
No. We've gone over time anyway, my friend. Dude, I'd love to have you back on if you're.
I was just gonna say that. I would love to carry the conversation on. I will do that. I would love this. This was great for me. I really enjoyed this.
Me too. Likewise. Well, before we wrap it up, tell everybody where they can get a hold of you for business. Go ahead and
fantastic.
Do a little shameless self-promotion there.
For sure. Absolutely. Appreciate it. First of all, everything that you want to know about me, you can go to our website, tridentconcepts.com. There you can learn about all the stuff that we're doing. You can go to our social media, our YouTube channels. Everything is on our website. So I try to drive people there. For more information on stuff that we're doing, I would recommend people join our mailing list, and they can do that on the website as well.
And do you still sell the book on the website? I know it's an older book.
Yes, the original book is out of print at the moment because we have a new book. But the original book is also available on Amazon on the digital format. So a Kindle format.
Next time I see you, if you don't mind, I'd love to trade you a signed copy of mine for you signing
100%
my copy of yours.
Without a doubt. That's a guarantee. And we'll have to make that happen sooner than later. It's been a while. I mean, we're zipping by each other, I feel like. And so we got to find time to actually break bread.
We don't even live that far from each other.
I know.
We're both from the Austin area. So we need to get together for sure.
It's terrible. Man.
All right. Well, I'm just so damn busy, man. We got to do something. You know what? Yeah. We just bought a house down in Lockhart, which is by state decree the barbecue capital of Texas.
100%.
So I'm going to invite you and a +1 down here, and we'll go grab some barbecue and drink some bourbon and smoke a cigar.
Don't tempt me with a bad time, man.
Oh no, we'll do it for sure. We'll do it for sure. All right, I know I got to let you go. I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check out Jeff. His stuff is first rate. He was a formative influence on my training as a young cop and soldier before he even knew I existed. So,
wow,
going to put that
Very
out
honored
there.
By that.
All right. Well, I will see everybody next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff I have to say to keep the algorithm fueled, and make sure and check Jeff out. All right. Take care, everybody. See you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.